Okay, good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Tech Tips Live. I'm happy to be your host today. My name is Jenny Lee Harris Vidrich. I am a technical project manager with Hertzler Systems. And before we get started with the main program, I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping details for us. The first thing is that we will answer as many questions as we can during the live program. Any that we are unable to answer, we will certainly follow up with you. So please post any questions you have in the call chat. And we are recording this session and we'll be posting it next week, I believe, on our website. Look for that to go up as soon as we can put it there. And then, as always, we really welcome your feedback on this program or anything. And we would certainly appreciate any input and suggestions for future Tech Tip Live um, topics. So certainly feel free to provide those as well. If you have them today, you can put those into the chat as well as your questions. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our person who is going to be our technical resource today on the call. This is Chris Bowman. Chris is one of our deployment specialists. He has deployed Gameseeker and provided support for our clients across all industries for several years. Many of you on the call may actually have worked with Chris and know him pretty well. Today, he's going to tell us all about using Gameseeker to communicate and putting information up on the big screen. So go ahead, Chris.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to talk about putting it on the big screen today. And first of all, with that question is, what does that mean? And what we're talking about here is the way a number of our customers have put up some large screen TVs or even projection monitors in various areas, and then they've displayed information generated by Gameseeker on those screens. And the reason we do that is it makes actionable data visible. The people out on the floor, the ones who are actually adjusting the machines and tweaking the process, can see the data in real time as it's being added and make adjustments as soon as the information is available. Another way you could do it is it promotes accountability. By that I mean that if people are doing things, if they're supposed to be doing checks on a regular basis and they stop, we can make that information immediately apparent, not only to them, but to everybody else. And along with that, that goes along with encouraging healthy competition. I've had a couple of my customers tell me that once they put some dashboards up on the screen and everybody could see how well they were doing, and in particular, they could see how well they were doing as opposed to some of their other coworkers, it really improved their performance because they were much more interested in dialing things in exactly and trying to do as well as they possibly can. Now, the way we do that is usually through dashboards. Sometimes it's desktops, but desktops are often a collection of charts and or dashboards. So it's most frequently through dashboards. The other technology that we have that can be very, very useful here is something we call slideshows, and I'll be showing you how those all work. And finally, we'll talk about using Server Edition and how that can be helpful for some of our customers. Okay, this is an example of what I talked about that would encouraging compliance and doing the checks on a regular basis. This right here is doing a number of what we call date-time dashboard components. This is saying that there was a quality check last done on line 1 at 3/18/2021 at 11:07, and because that was at the time I took this screenshot, less than 15 minutes prior to the current time, this is showing up without any color coding. Down here, the last check was done at 10:40, and the screenshot was taken at like 11:35. So since checks were done or expected to be done every 60 minutes, we were within 50 minutes or within 10 minutes of being overdue, and then that's when the color turned yellow. And for the check that was actually overdue, it turned red. Now, this is using a dashboard component called the date time component, and I was concerned that not everybody was familiar with that, so I thought I'd take a little quick slideshow on and show you that and show you how it works. So if you will give me just a minute, I will come back to this dashboard component here. This is that same dashboard, but you see everything is red now because it's later in the day. But if I right-click in here and go into Design Dashboard, we've got basically these are just some static text, some labels. But if I change to the first date time component, these are the properties. And right here, if you click on last style, this takes you into where you have your different choices. Okay. Jenny Lee, are you able to see the dashboard component here?
I was just going to say, no, I'm not able to. I'm seeing a little block on the screen, and that was it at the moment.
That's what I was afraid of. Sorry about that, folks. How about now?
Yes.
Okay. So the date time dashboard component has 4 options, 4 modes. One is current, which is just a clock. One is the last refresh, which can be useful, but not what we're talking about here today. And then these 2 options are the way you can improve the accountability. One is saying the last date time of the data, or this one is what you use if you're wanting to do checks like, say, every hour on the hour. And then it'll be turning yellow if you're 10 minutes of the hour and red if it gets past the hour and you haven't done a check. However, in this one, we're basically saying that I want to do checks every 60 minutes. If it's overdue, it turns red. My warning time is 10. My warning color is yellow. And if this is for SPC data, if you do false, that's false data. That would be DMS data. And then the filter tells the dashboard component what data to look at to get the most recent date time. So this is the type of component I'm using here. And I've actually got an inspection. So if I come back here and then refresh the dashboard, you can see oven 1 now shows a check at 2:08 and it's no longer red. So that's what we're talking about here with like encouraging compliance with like regular checks or other components or other statistics that you may want to display there.
And we have a question from the chat room, Chris, wondering how you would make the dashboard actually automatically catch that data has been updated.
Oh, okay. I should have said that while I was there. If you go into the dashboard, on the dashboard designer option here, I can set up a timer and I can just say I want this to refresh itself automatically every 30 seconds. If you do this on the dashboard designer properties as opposed to any of the individual properties, then it will refresh everything on the dashboard every X many seconds.
Okay.
Okay, let's continue on. Sounding the alarm, telling people when they've got a problem. That's a very important task that people need to do sometimes with some of these big screen displays. In this particular case, the scenario is we've got a food manufacturer who is packaging food, and they've got dashboards that are showing them how their various products are doing. It's telling them how many MAV violations they had. If you're not in foods, you may not know what a MAV, that stands for maximum allowable variation. And if you go below that, you need to take corrective action. Looking at the number of bags that were packaged that were below the label weight, what the mean was, the label weight, and how much, and the difference with basically, which is the giveaway.
Hey, Chris.
So,
can you make sure that you're in presenter mode and make sure that everything is sharing correctly again?
I've selected the desktop on sharing both times.
Okay.
So I'm not sure quite what's going on, but thank you for stopping me.
You're welcome.
Now, why is, I mean, select. Okay.
Okay, I can see now. Hopefully everybody else can too. Please let us know if you can't.
Okay, but you're probably seeing the split screen here.
I am, yes.
Okay. All right, finally getting back to where we are. Sorry about that, folks. All right. So then this is an example of some other dashboard components. In this case, we have a dial gauge and 3 bar gauges. In this example, we're looking at OEE data on the overall OEE data on the top, and then the 3 aspects of OEE down on the bottom. You know, these could be whatever parameters that you are looking for. You could be displaying. I have a customer that's done a lot of dashboards where they identified the 6 primary parameters for their product, and they had a nice dashboard that showed the mean using a dial gauge, or the CPK using a dial gauge, and the mean right underneath that using a horizontal bar gauge for each of those 6 components, and they would cycle through the various dashboards for each of the components that they were running that day. So this is another example of basically conveying what is the key information overall on how someone is doing. So this is another good way that the dashboards can be used on the big screen display as well as on someone's individual desktop.
Okay. And then we have another question about what are the best components to use when you're putting information up onto a big screen?
Well, the best component to use is going to vary a lot based upon what information is important to the audience. So, you know, I'm not sure I can tell you that this is the one best component. For example, if it's like compliance, then probably date time. For the food industry, I felt that dashboard grid that we looked at was probably the best choice. So it really isn't easy to say that this one dashboard component is the best.
Mm-hmm.
The 3 of the top one probably are simply the dashboard grid or dial gauges or bar gauges, but other ones that might be important, I'm going to switch over to designer. Please let me know if it's not, if you guys aren't sharing as well. Did that switch, Jenny Lee?
I can see you.
Good.
Hopefully others will chime in if they cannot.
Okay, so I mean, this is the date time component that I use to build all of these components. Then we have the stats that's like just, or excuse me, the labels, so just running across the top.
Now I'm not seeing it. Again, now I'm not seeing it, sorry.
I'm thanking you for stopping, but I'm selecting the whole screen each time.
Wow. Looks like it's going to make you do that extra step every time.
All right, then I will do it each time.
Okay.
Okay, so, you know, this is just a normal statistic. It's probably one of the lower end ones because it's kind of limited. You're just showing just a specific statistic for a specific retrieval. The marquee can be kind of useful and very, very entertaining. Don't tell me we lost it again.
Yeah, I am having trouble seeing your screen.
And now?
Okay.
Okay.
All right. It looks like others can see you, so keep going. It might be an issue with my setup.
Okay. This is the dashboard grid that I showed you in that second slide. The data table and the statistics list are probably less likely to be important for, especially on the big screen display. But it is possible, but they're often too far down in the weeds. GainSeeker charts are always a favorite. I've got a number of customers that have big screen displays where they're simply cycling through a bunch of charts for whatever product they're currently displaying. That is a capability using a desktop, using our dynamic desktop technology that was released in the last few years. Of course, we have the dial gauge and the bar gauge. A button is probably not tremendously useful on a big screen display, at least the taking action, because no one's going to walk up to the big screen to try and press a button. The two big data analytics could always be important, but it's probably less important for the people, the information you would display on a big screen. So overall, and paired sample analysis and the trend chart is a possibility. But I would say overall, for looking at things on the big screen, the bar gauge, the dial gauge, the chart, the data grid, and the dashboard, the date-time dashboard components would probably be the top choices.
Okay, great. Thanks.
All right, I'm going to switch back to the. I'm just going to manually switch every time, folks. So. Okay. I'm assuming that everyone now is seeing the PowerPoint presentation again. The last key technology I really wanted to talk about right now, or next to last, is the desktop slideshow. This is something, again, that we've added in the last few years that allows you to take a desktop, or basically any charts that you have open in GainSeeker charts, and then display them full size and cycle through them one at a time. So every single chart will be maximized within the Gameseeker charts window. It will be displayed for a certain length of time, and then it will switch on to the next chart. You can also, when you set up the slideshow, specify how frequently we will go back to the database and check to see if there's more data that needs to be added to the current chart. And you can even set up some animation effects, like sliding one chart out as the other one slides out, and other ways to do that. I would caution you, having experienced some people that created some big screen displays with less than ideal animation effects that actually reduce the efficiency of it, to be careful when you're using these effects. Again, I'm going to stop here and show you a slideshow. I'm going to try and share again my whole desktop. Okay, hopefully you guys are now seeing my desktop, and I've created a custom shortcut here that when I click on this shortcut, it will not only log in as a certain user, but it will open up a desktop and start a slideshow. So this slideshow is displaying the 3 dashboards that I was using in this presentation, and it is cycling through each of them after displaying every one 3 seconds for 3 seconds. So this is the type of thing that you can use Gainseeker charts to display any number of charts on a repeating basis. Now you do this by simply having the charts open, and then if you go to desktop and you select slideshow, this is where you can specify how long to display each chart. Looks like I had that set for 5 seconds. No, actually that's just a default value. I did have mine set for 3 seconds. How frequently to refresh all of the charts, your transition effects. If you've got the server edition, you can specify a location, and every time that refreshes, it will copy this these components out as a HTML file, and then you can say if you want to create like the dedicated shortcut I've got. These are the command line modifiers that you use to create the shortcut. You still need the in addition to this, you need the command line modifiers to automatically log in and open up the desktop. But combining that with this, you have that completely dedicated icon. Okay, so that's the desktop slideshow. I talked just a moment ago about the Gainseeker server edition. The GainSeeker Server Edition is a separate license from your regular licenses, and you only buy one for a entire implementation of GainSeeker. What the GainSeeker Server Edition does is it unlocks certain functionality. Using the Server Edition, you can have dashboard, a single PC, or you could be running the GainSeeker client on a server that would automatically pull up charts, desktops, dashboards, what have you, and save it as a JPEG or an HTML every single time the dashboard refreshes or the chart refreshes. What that means is you can then display those charts on other monitors without using additional GainSeeker licenses. So you could have 20 or 30 or really an open-ended number of monitors for charts, GainSeeker Server Edition, and why it can save you some money if you're using a lot of these big screen displays. Another thing that the Server Edition allows you to do is to run a Python script or a template immediately before or after a dashboard refreshes. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, if the data is being imported automatically without a user, you could have it go out and get the new data right before it refreshes the chart. Or one of the things I've done a couple times is I've got data that's being calculated from data that was being entered. Again, going back to the food industry, I've got a bunch of people on the floor who are entering package weights. From that package weights, we're calculating additional data records that are showing like the percent giveaway, even the pounds giveaway if we have access to production data. And if you can combine that with a cost value, we can calculate the cost of the giveaway from the pounds of giveaway. Now that is all data that's being calculated from the raw weight data that the operators are entering on the floor. So you could set up that you have the dashboard that every time it refreshes, or just before it refreshes rather, it goes out and recalculates that data, the giveaway data. Now, obviously giveaway is just a single example, but what we're talking about here is simply calculating data from the data that the operators are entering and then displaying that in the dashboard or desktop. So these are the two main functionalities that you get with GainSeeker Server Edition. If you're interested in that, call your account rep or email your account rep. Finally, some best practices. All right, one is when you're building a dashboard or a desktop, particularly a dashboard, to display on a big screen, you need to know what that screen's resolution is going to be. And that right hand in hand with that is you don't want the dashboard to be displaying just in a small corner of the monitor, but also because this is a big screen and people are not going to have mice or arrows that they can use to move around on the screen, you don't want to have any scroll bars. If you've got that, you've got a portion of your dashboard that the operator cannot see. Another thing in big screen displays, though this is also for just looking at it on your monitor, is make use of color coding. Make things that the operators need to take notice of, jump out on the screen. Finally,
Okay.
you need...
I'm sorry, Chris. I was just going to interrupt and remind people that if they're having trouble finding where the chat is for questions, it's towards the bottom of the screen, towards the center.
Okay. Finally, and this is probably kind of obvious, but I think it does help to repeat it, you need to know your audience. What do they need to know? What's important? When we start at the beginning, the reason to be putting data on the big screen display is to give the people that are seeing that screen the information that they need to take the action that they need to take. So if you're going to put something on the big screen, make sure that it's what the operators need to know, otherwise it's just going to be a distraction at best. So these are some of the best practices that we here at Hertzler have taken note of for building big screen displays. Questions? I've gotten several questions through the presentation, though most of them seem to have been, why can't I see what you're talking about?
Yeah.
So if you've got a question, please paste it into the chat window, and Jenny Lee will give it to me, and I will try and answer it.
Absolutely. We have about 5 minutes left, so we'll see if we have any additional questions that come through. I guess one of the questions that I would just put out there on behalf of the audience is, in addition to the things that you've presented in the slideshow here today, how do you really approach determining whether something is needed for the big screen? When is that appropriate? So when would you, at what point, and how do you introduce that concept into a project?
Well, I guess it keeps on coming back to what I was just saying. If the operators out on the floor need to be taking action to try and tweak their process, then they need to know this information. So again, going back to that foods example, if I'm an operator and I'm running a line, it can be hard for me to know just by measuring 5 bags of product every 20 or 30 minutes, exactly how that line is running. Where is my average? So having that big screen display that we showed, let me switch back to that. Okay, this was showing them right away not only what their mean was, but what was the label weight and the giveaway. Now, obviously, they want to put the mean of their distribution as close to their label weight as they can, but they also need to make sure that they don't end up with too high a percentage of bags below label. Again, for people that may not be familiar with the rules that the food manufacturers operate under, they're allowed a certain percentage of bags that are below label. But at the end of the shift, that mean has better be above the label weight, or they've got to go back and sort through their product and take corrective action. So this is just an example, but again, you have to be thinking about, okay, the people on the floor that are running the equipment, what information do we need to provide them so that they can dial their machines or their equipment or whatever it is in to produce as high a quality of product as they can. So this is going to be based upon, okay, what adjustments can the operators do to make things better? I mean, if there's certain things that they can't do, then there's not really a whole lot of point in displaying that out on the screen. Mm-hmm. So you start off with, what are the operators, what is their responsibility? And then work backwards from there.
Okay, great, thank you. So thank you so much, Chris. It was a good presentation, a lot of questions. If you could scroll down to the next slide for me, thanks. So we'll wrap up here. Again, send us questions by email if you have any additional ones. Our next Tech Tips Live is April 15th, and that topic is going to be diving into the data canvas. We will again post a recording of today's program next week. Always appreciate your feedback and ideas for other programs. And feel free to email us at sales@hertzler.com with any questions, any feedback, any suggestions. So thanks so much, folks. Have a great day, and thank you again for joining us here on Tech Tips Live.